She was 21 years old, barely 5 feet tall, working as an elevator operator for pennies in San Antonio. But when 12,000 workers walked off their jobs in January 1938, they didn't choose a politician to lead them. They didn't choose a union boss. They didn't choose a man. They chose her, a young Mexican-American woman from the slums. Her name was Emma Tenayuca. They called her La Pasionaria, the passionate one. And she would change American labor law forever. What she did at 21 would make national headlines, but it would also cost her everything she had. This is her story. The story of a woman who took on corporate America and won. The story they tried to erase from history. Until now. Emma Tenayuca was born on December 21st, 1916 in San Antonio, Texas, the oldest of 11 children. Her family had deep roots in Texas, Spanish and Native American ancestry going back generations before Texas was even a state. But like many Mexican-American families during the Great Depression, they were hit hard. Emma was sent to live with her grandparents. It was her grandfather, Francisco Zepeda, who changed everything. A carpenter who followed Mexican politics with great passion. Every Sunday, he took young Emma to Plaza del Zacate. Soapbox speakers debated politics, labor rights, and revolution there. She would sit across from him, reading the newspaper. At 10 years old, she was already absorbing ideas about justice and power. Her grandmother was a registered voter who debated local politics at home. In this house, Emma learned that change was possible. At Brackenridge High School, Emma excelled. Debate team, baseball, basketball. But her real education happened outside the classroom. In 1933, at just 16 years old, Emma joined a picket line at the Fink Cigar Company during their strike. She watched police beat the striking women with clubs. Then she was arrested herself, her first arrest. It would not be her last. Years later, she said, quote, "I never thought in terms of fear. I thought in terms of justice," end quote. She meant every word. After graduation, Emma worked as an elevator operator at the Gunter Hotel. But organizing workers was her true calling in life. By 1937, she led the Workers' Alliance of America in San Antonio. Over 10,000 members. She was just 20. Most members were Pecan shellers, the lowest paid workers in America, and they were about to fight back against their oppressors. But first, you need to understand just how terrible things were. The conditions these workers faced were absolutely horrific. In the 1930s, San Antonio was the pecan capital of the world. Texas produced half of America's pecans each year. The city had 400 shelling factories, between 10 and 20,000 workers, mostly Mexican-American women and children. How much did they earn for this backbreaking work? $2 to $3 per week. Working more than 10 hours every single day? 7 days a week. No breaks, no bathrooms, no running water. Let that sink in for a moment. This was their daily reality. The factories were cramped with no ventilation at all. Brown dust from the pecans filled the air constantly. Workers got sick. Children as young as 10 years old worked alongside their mothers, shelling pecans with their bare hands until they bled. San Antonio had a tuberculosis death rate of 148 per 100,000. The national average was just 54, nearly 3 times higher than the rest of America. Workers were literally dying for pennies, and the owners got rich off them. The biggest company was Southern Pecan Shelling, owned by Julius Seligman. It produced 1/3 of the nation's entire pecan crop. Here is the thing. The company used to have machines to do this work, but they replaced machines with human workers instead. Why would they do that? Because paying desperate people pennies was cheaper than maintaining machines. Profit over human lives. The west side of San Antonio, where most Mexican Americans lived, was one of the worst slums in the entire United States of America. Houses rented for 50 cents per week, dirt floors, no electricity, no running water, unpaved streets with open sewage everywhere. This was America in the 1930s, and nobody in power seemed to care about these people at all. Until January 1938, on January 31st, the Southern Pecan Shelling Company announced a wage cut from 6 to 7 cents down to 5 or 6 cents. 1 cent per pound does not sound like much, but when you are already starving, that 1 cent means everything to your family. The workers did not negotiate. They did not write letters. They did not beg. They simply walked out of the factories that day. On that first day, about 6,000 workers left their posts. By mid-February, that number had grown to 12,000 people. 12,000 workers. 2/3 of the entire pecan industry workforce in San Antonio gone in an instant. The city was shocked. And when they needed someone to lead them, they turned to Emma Tenayuca. She was unanimously elected strike committee chair. She was not a pecan sheller herself, but she had spent years fighting for these workers, and they trusted her completely. Emma Tenayuca was just 21 years old, leading the largest strike in San Antonio history, a tiny woman with enormous courage. Her speeches were legendary. She spoke with such fire and passion that they called her La Pasionaria de Texas in the newspapers. The strike made national news. Time magazine featured her story. Newspapers across the country covered what was happening in Texas. This was no longer just about wages. Historians later wrote that it became a mass movement against starvation and for civil rights. It changed the entire character of West Side San Antonio forever. For the first time, these workers realized their collective power. But the city government was not about to let them win without a brutal fight. The powerful would not give up their profits easily. Police Chief Owen Kilday was determined to crush this strike. He called it a red plot, a communist conspiracy against America. He called Emma Tenayuca, quote, a paid agitator sent here to stir up trouble among the ignorant Mexican workers, end quote, publicly. She was not paid anything. She was from San Antonio. Her family had been in Texas for generations, but facts did not matter to him. What mattered was breaking the strike by any means necessary. The crackdown that followed was absolutely brutal and unforgiving. Police used tear gas on peaceful picketers at least 6 separate times during the strike. They attacked women and children too. Officers used billy clubs on anyone who got in their way. Over 700 people were arrested during the course of the strike. In 1 week in February, 90 male strikers were thrown into a jail designed for 60 people, along with 200 other prisoners. Emma herself was arrested repeatedly during the strike. At one point, she was held for 30 hours straight before being released. The city closed soup kitchens, set up to feed hungry strikers. They claimed health ordinance violations. They wanted to starve them. But the workers did not stop fighting back. They kept picketing 400 factories. They kept marching through the streets daily. Then pressure started building against Emma personally. Her membership in the Communist Party became a target for her enemies. Yes, Emma was a Communist Party member. In the 1930s, it was one of the few groups that truly fought for all workers. But the word communist was a weapon used against her. The city used it to turn public opinion against the entire strike movement. To protect the movement, Emma made a painful decision. She stepped back from her public leadership role despite her personal feelings. Another organizer named Luisa Moreno took over as the public face. Emma continued supporting the strike from behind the scenes quietly. Years later, she admitted she resented having to step aside, but she did it for the greater good of all the workers involved. The strike continued without her public leadership for 37 days total, until finally, after weeks of struggle, they won. On March 8, 1938, the workers returned to their jobs. Both sides agreed to resolve the dispute through arbitration. The arbitration board ruled in April. Wages would increase to 7 and 8 cents per pound. The workers had won their fight. But the bigger victory came in June, when President Roosevelt signed the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 into law. For the first time in American history, there was a federal minimum wage, 25 cents per hour for workers across the nation. The Pecan shellers' strike did not single-handedly cause this law to pass, but it was part of the pressure that made it happen. 25 cents per hour was more money than these workers had ever made in their lives before. It was truly revolutionary. But here is the tragic twist that nobody expected. The Pecan companies did not want to pay the new minimum wage to their workers, so they brought back the machines. The same machines they had replaced with cheap human labor years earlier returned to the factories. Over the next 3 years, more than 10,000 Pecan shellers in San Antonio lost their jobs permanently. The industry collapsed. The workers had fought for dignity and respect. They had won dignity. But many lost their livelihoods in the process of winning. Many found new jobs as America mobilized for World War II. But the pecan industry and its union never recovered from the changes. And for Emma Tenayuca personally, the worst part of her story was still yet to come. Her sacrifice was just beginning to unfold. On August 25, 1939, Emma was scheduled to speak at a Communist Party meeting at the Municipal Auditorium. What happened that night sounds like something from another country entirely, but it happened here in America, in Texas specifically. A mob of 5,000 people surrounded the auditorium that evening. Many of them were members of the Ku Klux Klan organization. When they heard people inside singing the Star-Spangled Banner, the mob outside went completely wild with rage and hatred for them. They hurled bricks and rocks at the building. Police had to evacuate Emma through an underground tunnel to the San Antonio River. The mob broke through police barricades and vandalized the entire auditorium. Emma escaped just in time to save her own life that night. Her public life in San Antonio was over after that terrifying night. She received death threats constantly from people who hated her. She was blacklisted by the entire business community of San Antonio. She could not find any work at all anywhere in the city. At just 23 years old, Emma Tenayuca was forced to flee her hometown, the city her family had called home for generations. She moved to Houston first, then to San Francisco, far away from Texas. She even changed her name to avoid persecution and danger. Her marriage to Homer Brooks fell apart completely. She left the Communist Party in 1946 after learning about Stalin. She became a school teacher in California and built a quiet new life. She had a son. She lived far from the spotlight she once knew. For nearly 30 years, Emma Tenayuca lived in exile from her home. The woman who led 12,000 workers became a footnote. But the story does not end there, in sadness and obscurity. In the late 1960s, something completely unexpected happened. The Chicano movement was rising across America during that era. Young activists were rediscovering their history and forgotten heroes. And they found Emma Tenayuca still alive, the woman who had accomplished at 21 what most people never do in a lifetime. Emma returned to San Antonio in the late 60s, finally. She earned a master's degree and became a bilingual education teacher there. She taught in the Harlandale School District until her retirement in 1982, shaping young minds for nearly 2 decades. In an interview, she said, quote, "To my surprise, I return and I find myself some sort of heroine," end quote, with genuine amazement. Scholars and activists sought her out constantly during those years. They asked her to tell her story again and again to audiences. In 1991, she was inducted into the San Antonio Women's Hall of Fame. The city that drove her out now honored her. When asked about regrets, she answered, quote, "Was I in a state of panic or fear? No. I was pretty defiant, end quote, without hesitation. Quote, I fought against poverty, high infant death rates, disease, hunger, and misery. I would do the same thing again, end quote, always. Emma Tenayuca died on July 23, 1999, at age 82. She was buried in San Antonio, finally home forever. At her funeral, Chicana writer Carmen Tafolla spoke these powerful words about the woman they all loved and admired so very much. Quote, La Pasionaria, we called her because she was our passion, because she was our heart defendiendo, a los pobres, end quote, she said. Quote, speaking out at a time when neither Mexicans nor women were expected to speak at all, end quote. Those words still echo today. Today, a Texas historical marker stands in Milam Park, the same plaza where her grandfather took her as a young child long ago. Her story is taught in schools across America now. Children's books tell her tale to new generations of young readers every year. The Fair Labor Standards Act still protects American workers today. The minimum wage is not 25 cents anymore, thankfully, but the fight for fair wages continues right now. In warehouses, in fast food restaurants, in fields across America every single day, Emma Tenayuca showed what one person can accomplish. One young, small, defiant person who refused to accept injustice around her. So here is my question for you watching today. When you were 21 or when you turn 21, what will you stand for?